Pizza and Grill. Come on out here. They do have food and drink specials every time we're here, so make sure you come on out for that. Very happy to have on our bench racing hotline one of our fantasy gurus. Oops, said I was never going to say that after the Bill Clark years, but I did. Eric McClung joins us. Hi, Eric.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're terrific. But I got to ask you a question. Why can't I ask you about Kyle Busch in Bristol?
I think, well, if you saw the first, 2 minutes of the race, I think you know why.
Okay, well, I suspected that's what it was about. Okay, I won't ask you anymore. I picked him last week, too. All right, so we're going to a totally different place, about as different, I think, as you could get from Bristol Motor Speedway would be, what is it?
Auto Club
Speedway at wherever it is. Very similar to Michigan International Speedway. Eric, what is different about California from MIS?
Well, I mean, in terms of differences, you mentioned it there. There is definitely some comparisons and things that you can use. From looking over the numbers and whatnot, I usually say, talk about average running position a lot. And if somebody's 15th or better, I say that's pretty good. But really, at Fontana and Auto Club, really you're looking for guys who are consistently in the single digits, because I think probably this track more than any other, it's really just about speed. There's not really much finesse. It's just pedal on the floor and the car takes off. There's not really, you mentioned how different it is from Bristol, where so much of it is in the driver's hand and visibility and getting in a rhythm around the track. Fontana is pretty much the complete opposite. It's pretty much entirely, equipment-based. It's just about speed and just going as fast as you can. It's very simple, and that's why, you don't really see a lot of lead changes under, green flag conditions. And it's generally one of the more boring races on the schedule. So I think Michigan's a little bit more interesting from a fan perspective. And in terms of the numbers, I think you can get away with getting away with some guys who are maybe not elite type of drivers who, are not going to have that top-end speed that you really need at Fontana.
Eric, does this race almost come down, do you have to look at more the crew chief and the way that the teams are able to get in and out of the pits, more so than the driver? Like you said, it's just kind of mash the pedal down and go. But these races have seemed to be won more often than not by strategy and fuel economy and things like that. So it's almost like you have to forget about the driver and worry more about the crew chief.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Because it is, it's such a wide track. You're going to see a lot of long green flag runs. So fuel strategy and those kinds of things are definitely going to, 2 tires versus 4 tires and all that type of stuff is going to be, pretty critical late in the run. And it's interesting to bring that up because one guy that I like a lot in this particular race is Clint Boyer. And, considering his, the changeover, how that works with the crew chief, change that goes along with that, it'll be pretty interesting to see how that plays out. He does own 4 straight top 10s with an average running position of 8th or better in those last 3. And he's been off to a pretty good start, collecting some top 10 finishes already this season. Michael Waltrip Racing as a whole was pretty incredible at Bristol last week. So it'll be very interesting to see how him and his new team, if they're able to continue all that momentum into Fontana.
So who would you like in your Yahoo game type stuff as far as your A drivers?
Well, I think you pretty much have to go with Jimmy Johnson. The great news today obviously was Chad Canales is not going to be suspended. He gets the 25 points back. So his career numbers at Fontana pretty much speak for themselves. 17 career starts there. He's won 5 times. 12 of those 17 races have resulted in top 5 finishes. His career average running position up at Fontana is an incredible 5.4. If you take a look at the next driver below him, it's Matt Kenseth at just a little bit better than 9. So a huge discrepancy, really, from Jimmy Johnson and everybody else. So I really can't see how you can go with anybody besides Jimmy Johnson as an A-list driver. Matt Kenseth, though, would be a good secondary option. Kevin Harvick as well. He won there last year. He was a runner-up in one of the 2010 races. And like Clint Boyer, he also has 4 straight top 10s. at Auto Club. So if for whatever reason you use a lot of Jimmy Johnson already, I think Matt Kansas or Kevin Harvick would be your fallback option there on the A list.
How about on the B list?
For the B list, I mentioned Clint Boyer earlier. I think he's pretty much an automatic start. For that secondary starting spot, I think it's kind of a toss-up between Mark Martin, average running position of 5th or better in 3 of the last 4 at Auto Club. And Ryan Newman, in recent years, he's been pretty good after not being very good at Fontana for much of his career. He's got 2 top 5, 5th place finishes his last 2 starts at Auto Club. On the bench, I think the 2 guys that you could go with, even though you're probably not going to trust them in the race, is teammates Juan Pablo Montoya and Jamie McMurray. If you look at the last 4 races at Auto Club, those 2 drivers have selected 3 poles, and they've qualified extremely well. So we know in the Yahoo game we want to try to get those bonus points for starting in the top 4. At least one of those guys could very well challenge for the pole. So I think those are the 2 guys you go with on your bench. On the C list, we complained all year. It's pretty much slim pickings. I think you have to go one of 2 ways, either Eric Almirola, or if you started him a lot, I think Brandon Gaughan, just because he's in a Richard Childress car. And as we talked about, speed is so critical at Fontana. I don't think you can get away with some of these lesser guys, Bobby Labonte or Casey Mears. I just don't think that those cars are going to be fast enough to compete. Not to say that Eric Almirola by any means is a threat, but I just think the equipment is so much better. You really have to go that route.
Eric, 4 races into the season, has anything surprised you at this point? Do you see a trend that?
I'll finish it for him. You see any kind of a trend so far?
Well, I think the big eye opener, is Michael Waltrip Racing. I mentioned, harped on Clint Boyer a little bit earlier. I've never really had any doubt that he could be good, but to be good this quickly, I think is pretty surprising. Mark Martin has fared very well in his 3 races so far. So I think from an organizational standpoint, I think what's going on in Michael Waltrip Racing is pretty impressive. Especially when you look at the other big Toyota team in Joe Gibbs, you would think the Gibbs cars would be head and shoulders above Waltrip, especially in the early going, but that really has not been the case at all. So I think that's pretty big. And pretty much the train wreck that's been Casey Kane
I guess. Yeah.
I think that's pretty huge. Everybody's talking, just automatically he goes to Hendrick. He's in the chase. He's going to be this and that and win a bunch of races. But I really think over his career, he's pretty much proven to be a good guy on 1.5-mile tracks, especially Atlanta and Texas. There's cookie cutter Charlotte as well. Outside of that, he's kind of a hit or miss guy. So, I really think if I was going to start an organization, if you're going to look at a driver with that kind of experience in that age bracket, I think Clint Boyer really is a better guy than Casey Kane, quite frankly. So I think kind of that parallel, with both of them going to different teams, I think has been pretty big.
Eric, we've got about 2 minutes to go here. If you were thinking of a one-and-done type of league, looking at the season before it started, would you have saved, with Jimmy Johnson's dominant numbers for ACS, would you have saved him for this race? Do you look that far ahead when you're playing a game like that? Do you recommend that people look that far ahead?
Yeah, actually, I'm in a pool where you pick, and you had to do this before the start of the season. You picked 1 driver for every race,
right?
But you could take 5 drivers a second time. So Jimmy Johnson was one. I used, obviously he was one of the 5 guys I used twice, and one of them is this race at Fontana. As I mentioned, the numbers are, just absolutely phenomenal. He's an automatic top 5. A bad run at Fontana for Jimmy Johnson is a top 10. So he's pretty much as solid as it gets. He's almost bulletproof. On this track. So yeah, absolutely. If you are in a pool like the one I mentioned, and you're coming into the season and you have to make all your picks ahead of time. Yeah, Johnson. Even if you can only start him once, I think he's pretty much an automatic guy at Auto Club. He's good at plenty of other tracks, certainly Phoenix comes to mind, and a bunch of others. But yeah, Fontana, just because I mentioned that average running position, he's running in the top 5. Everybody else below him is pretty much in the top 10. It's just a huge difference.
All right, he is Eric McClung. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric McClung. Also read his fantasy articles at kffl.com. And Eric's about a bi-weekly guest on Pit Row. Would be our one of our fantasy racing experts. Thanks again, Eric, for your time this week. Good luck with your picks at Auto Club, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Eric McClung.